All right, everybody, welcome back. So, today's show is going to be a recap of everything that went down on the weekend, the parade, the No Kings movement, so much to cover. We might be on here for a little bit because I'm just going to take my time today. We're not going to rush through this show. Now, since the beginning, I told you that the illegal immigration issue was always a straw man. It was set up by the Democrats so that the conservatives could then punt the ball. Now, this is an issue that could have been solved a long time ago, but it has now become the pretense to bring in the surveillance state. So I'm going to explain to you the ritual that happened over the weekend because both the No Kings movement and the parade were intentional sides of the paradigm. They established a clear paradigm that is false once again. These people are masters at this. They know that the masses will fall into one side or the other. And this is how it works. And we'll break all that down today as we analyze the events that took place over the weekend. Some of them are still taking place, but I thought today was a good time to come in and break all this down. So within the last 24 hours, Trump was caught on a hot mic admitting essentially that this whole thing was a pretense to go after what he called homegrowns. Homegrowns are next. Now, what was the context of this? Well, the context of this was sending domestic terrorists to offshore prisons in El Salvador. Let's play this, see if this plays.
The immigration standoff over the Maryland husband and father wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The U.S. Supreme Court just days ago ruling the U.S. must facilitate his return. But today, President Trump and the president of El Salvador in the Oval Office, El Salvador's president, when asked if he'll return the man, said that was a preposterous question. Here's Terry Moran tonight.
At the White House today, President Trump and the president of El Salvador, and at the center of their agenda, one man. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, a Salvadoran immigrant, husband and father, whom the Trump administration admits was mistakenly deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador.
He's done a fantastic job.
Today, Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele said he's got no plans to send Abrego Garcia back home to the U.S. and his family.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous.
The Supreme Court unanimously ruled late last week that Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador was, quote, illegal, and ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. The administration claims Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang, but a federal judge said last week they have offered, quote, no evidence to back that up, and he has no criminal record here or in El Salvador. After that ruling, President Trump told reporters this.
I have great respect for the Supreme Court. If they said to bring him back, I would tell them to bring him back.
But now the administration argues that federal courts have no authority to direct the executive branch on how to conduct foreign relations. And Attorney General Pam Bondi said today that bringing Abrego Garcia back would be up to El Salvador.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
And over the weekend, 10 more migrants were sent to that prison in El Salvador. Trump said he likes it, even for U.S. citizens, suggesting Americans could be next.
I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that.
That might sound like Trump's just joking, trying to rile up his opponents, but before reporters...
Now understand that Trump's FBI during his first term already identified the domestic threat in a leaked FBI memo. In that leaked FBI memo during Trump's first term, he named conspiracy theorists, and literally he named Q as the top domestic threat. And if they can do this to a man who they claimed was MS-13 but had no criminal record, they could do the same thing to you and I based on what Trump just said about sending our criminals to El Salvador. Now, I believe that anybody who opposes Trump is going to be lumped into all this as well. And the left will continue to be the predetermined losers, all by design. And they may even, I could see them even shifting the whole false flag patsy profile to look more like left-wing nuts instead of middle-class white Americans, or they'll just say, oh, this is what they all look like. So there'll be a little bit of both. But notice, Trump didn't say that the next people he was going to go after were the left, which is what people basically voted for him to do. He literally named the domestic criminals. And they've already set up that profile as a middle-aged or young white male. So here we go. And now you're starting to see how this whole illegal immigrant operation, that was a pretext to a much broader sweep. And it's going to lump in any anti-government individuals because they don't need any proof, as you just saw. They don't need any proof. Now, why did they send that guy to El Salvador who had no criminal record? Because that's the precedent. Do you see? They have to have one as the example. And when no one's up in arms about it, oh, they can just send people, American citizens with no record, off to an El Salvadorian prison. And when nobody stands up and everybody defends that, now they have an open door to do it to anyone they want. Now, what is the whole purpose of sending them offshore? Well, think about it. If you're here on American soil, you're in front of the cameras, you're going to courts, right, to try to defend yourself. And they don't want that. Because then people might wake up. They'll be like, wow, Casey had no criminal record. All he was doing was he was online talking about stuff. He got sent to El Salvador with no proof. This could happen to anybody. This is why I tell you guys, I'm putting a lot on the line to do this. And I'm not saying that to elevate myself. I'm saying that because there are little things that you can do to help get the word out so that this never happens to people like me and other YouTubers who are putting it all on the line to speak the truth to you instead of allowing you to fall right back into the right-left paradigm. And there are a lot of us out there trying to tell people to get out of the right-left paradigm. Now, today we're going to get into an update on the whole No Kings protest, how it all went down. We're going to talk a little bit about Iran and the parade and everything. Now, this whole No Kings thing. Oh, the irony, right? Oh, the irony. We've been saying no kings now for the last few years. I even asked you guys to write in Jesus Christ kingdom into the ballot, the Lord's Prayer, instead of the earthly kings. So once again, they took something good, they took something holy, and they once again co-opted it into something evil, which of course is the false paradigm of wanting to go back to the old ineffective government, the old right-left paradigm in which we're supposed to believe that there were no kings, even though there were. But that's the other option in place of Trump's tyranny. When the whole point was to go back to Christ's kingdom, not earthly kingdoms and governments. But no one's talking about Jesus Christ's kingdom, are they, with this No Kings movement? Of course they're not, because it's another paradigm. We're also going to cover the Congress murders. Yes, there were congressmen killed yesterday. We're going to talk about the mask drama, as well as Gavin Newsom gets control back over the National Guard. Also, Governor DeSantis' bizarre honey trap comments we're going to get into that actually manifested yesterday with the death. Well, someone ran down a bunch of people in cars. We're going to call him Run Him Down DeSantis. Also, Susan WokeJicki got back control of 23andMe, things are getting really weird, you guys. Warp speed change. I mean, I can't even believe this. Now, let's first talk about Israel and Iran. Now, I'm not going to belabor this whole point. You guys have all, those of you that are interested in this, you know what's going on. You've been following it. You don't need me to sit here for hours and pontificate over this. This is a complex situation. And you guys are probably sick of hearing the exact same talking points and drama over and over again. Every 6 months, it's the same playbook. Israel picks a fight. Iran threatens to retaliate. They fire off a few missiles, 99% of which we're supposed to believe are intercepted, because that's what the news tells us. Iran then threatens nuclear war, which never happens, and then wash, rinse, repeat. The Bible tells us there will be wars and rumors of war. And so this is pretty much what's happening. And that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. Israel never admits the casualties. They pump up Iran's casualties. And it just, again, wash, rinse, repeat. Now, this seesaw of control over the National Guard took yet another turn, with power back in the hands of Gavin Newsom. It says here, Trump ordered to return control of the National Guard troops to Gavin Newsom's after illegal order over LA protests. So again, this is playing out in public opinion. Eventually, they will settle on a precedent moving forward. I assume that Trump will get control back over the National Guard at some point because they need them or the military in order to enforce and carry out what they're doing, right? Which is complete and total dominance and control of the American people at some point. Now, this next story is interesting. 23andMe founder Ann WokeJicki, I call her, will regain control of embattled DNA company after all. Now, if you don't know who's, this is actually Ann. I'm sorry. Messed that up. Ann WokeJicki. Her sister was Susan WokeJicki. She was the CEO who ruined YouTube. It used to be YouTube, and then it became ThemTube and Corporate Tube. I remember the back in the day where you start a YouTube channel, and most people who weren't even like anybody could get like 5,000 subscribers in 2 months. Like literally, it was open season on YouTube. And then all of a sudden, now when you go on YouTube, it's all produced people who you have no idea who's behind them, with full-blown studios and perfect editing. And you're like, who are these people? So now this is the YouTube we have. And of course, corporate came in later, and all the big talking heads and all the big news channels came in. That never used to be the case with YouTube. They didn't have YouTube channels. CNN didn't have a YouTube channel in the beginning. It wasn't until they corporatized YouTube. And then, of course, the rest was history with the censorship and all this. But this is her sister. And she lost 23andMe, which, of course, is the DNA database where they told everyone, hey, send us your DNA. And we'll run tests and see who you're related to and who you're not related to. And we can see if you're predisposed to diseases and all these other things. And then all of a sudden, they went bankrupt, and all their private information was up for grabs for sale to the highest bidder. Well, Ann now got control back over the company. Now, all of this was probably just some false flag. She probably had control of the company the whole time, but they needed us to believe that she didn't, so they can say, oh, we didn't know. People who had control of it, they're the ones that sold your private information. It wasn't us. In a surprise twist, 23andMe founder and former CEO Ann WokeJicki is set to regain control of the DNA's company assets. In May, a company called Regeneron bought 23andMe for $256 million, but WokeJicki's nonprofit was able to reopen bidding with an unsolicited offer of $305 million. Bankruptcy judge agreed to reopen bidding, blah, 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 blah. So that's all just nonsense to make you believe that there was this battle for your DNA. Unbelievable. Well, let's get into the No Kings Honey Trap 2.0, I'm calling it. As DeSantis told Floridians that they are completely within their legal right to run down protesters in their car if they feel like their life is in danger. I mean, who says that? I mean, even if it was true, which it is, who says that? He gave a precise, exact scenario, which actually ended up playing out, not in Florida, but somewhere else. And we'll get into that story next. Now, before you get upset thinking that I'm siding with the liberal protesters who has essentially co-opted our movement against tyranny and against the police state and against AI and against drones, before you get upset, understand that this whole thing was a setup. DeSantis said this on purpose. And I'm trying to protect people from walking right into these honey traps. Remember when Trump showed up or told people to show up to the crapper hole and then he failed to pre-pardon them when he knew that they were in trouble? He could have pre-pardoned them before he left office. You know, he's always claiming to be so much smarter than Biden. Well, how did Biden figure out how to pre-pardon Fauci? But Trump just didn't think of that. So here's what's going on. And the people that took the bait, DeSantis isn't coming to your aid. He decided to be a hero and take out some destructive protesters in your neighborhood. So did this all play out? Well, let's read his comments first. Thousands of Floridians expected to march in the No Kings National Day of Defiance on Saturday. That was yesterday. Had better be on their best behavior, warned Florida's governor. Governor DeSantis said that drivers will not be at fault if they hit protesters that block roadways. In a clip that took social media by storm, interviewed on the Rubin Report podcast episode released Wednesday, he said, "You have a right to flee for your safety. And so if you drive off and you hit one of these people, that's their fault for impinging on you," DeSantis said. "You don't have to sit there and just be a sitting duck and let the mob grab you out of your car and drag you through the streets." That's pretty specific, isn't it? It's a pretty specific scenario. So, the exact scenario ended up playing out. Somebody must have watched that and go, I can run people down, except it happened in Virginia and San Francisco. No Kings protesters were struck by motorists. We'll see how they got dealt with. Protesters at No Kings event in Culpeper, Virginia and San Francisco have been struck by motorists. Protests were taking place at 2,000 sites nationwide. Police in Northern Virginia, city of Culpeper, identified 21-year-old Joseph Cheklik as a motorist there. No injuries have been reported. Police said they have filed reckless driving charges against Cheklik. See? Did anyone come to this guy's aid when he decided to take DeSantis, his advice? Nope, because it was a different state. Wow. More charges will be filed. In San Francisco, at least 4 No Kings protesters in San Francisco were struck by a motorist and then fled the scene. So they're going to find them because they've got all this surveillance in the air, right? Person's not getting away. Wow. So it manifests. This is how the sorcery works. It's honey traps to get you engaged, to give you a false sense of security, and then in comes the dragnet. And this is the conflict being set up here. Now, how do people fall for this? Well, think about it. Nobody wants their cities to burn, including myself. I was horrified during the pandemic when we watched our cities burn. That was the setup. And Trump intentionally didn't do much about that. He threatened to, but he intentionally didn't. And that brings us to the present. And now everyone has the memory of how the liberals got away with all that. And they're like, oh, this ain't happening again. We're ready. So, of course, people are going to want to go and defend their cities. They're going to want to show up to these protests to make sure these people aren't burning things down, right? And so that is the setup to violence, because they need this so they can practice all their little gadgets and toys and drones. And they're setting you up to be a hero, to defend your city. And now, if you don't believe this or understand how all this works, the media intentionally led all these people to your cities by advertising the protests on national TV. And then they intentionally seeded in this inflammatory fear that your city was going to be burned and looted and all your businesses destroyed. So, of course, they knew that people were going to show up to defend their city, to draw you right into the conflict. I mean, this is diabolical how we are manipulated by our government. It's diabolical, you guys. Now, let's get into these masks, because a lot of people are talking about this. Do you have a right to wear masks? Apparently you do, despite Trump's double standard. So they're saying they don't want you to wear a mask now. Why? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? So they can identify you. How do they identify you? Well, they've already shown us what kind of technology, facial recognition technology they have, right? A bunch of people have already signed up for Real ID, which scanned your face. All they got to do is run that through the algorithm and pick your face up on a camera while you're rioting. And then they come back later and round everybody up, serve warrants, and find everybody who threw a rock at a cop. Now, of course, those people should be in trouble for throwing a rock at a cop. That's not what's at debate here. It's that the controllers are using this as an opportunity to practice. They're literally drawing people in on purpose so that they can practice on us. They're intentionally inciting and radicalizing people through the media to come up to these things, to show up to these things. This is why if they ever pick me up, you'll know that it's not because I told anyone to go to a protest. It's not because I've radicalized anyone to violence, because I'm telling you just the opposite. You'll know it's because I'm outside the right-left paradigm, and they hate when people call them out about this stuff. So now let's read this. Do protesters have a right to hide their faces? Donald Trump, who likes to show and see his own face as often as possible, clearly does not think so. One demand to university has been that they outlaw masking at demonstrations in response to protests. So Trump, the AI needs to see your face. Okay. And I can imagine that eventually it will be illegal to wear a mask when just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe 6 now. Well, gosh, how long has it been since the pandemic? They made us wear masks, right? Mask on, mask off. Now, things got weird because there was a shooting. These two representatives, it was 2 Democrat congressmen. Let's talk about this now. Representative Melissa Hortman, her husband, assassinated. Senator John Hoffman and his wife shot in targeted shootings. I think they survived. But this is crazy, you guys. Now, this actually shut down the No Kings protest in Minnesota where this happened because they were hunting for this guy. They shut that down. And apparently this guy who they claim did it owns a security company. Wow. Happened in Champlain and Brooklyn Park. Here's the guy here. They claim, now we have no way of knowing. This guy could be a patsy, right? This could have been an inside job, and they're just naming this guy, and they're going to, apply charges. They could say this is anybody they want. I've learned not to trust the media at face value. Let's see what this has to say here.
These boards and commissions. The Workforce Development Council has about 60 people on it. We were hearing more from the roommate of the suspect here, David Carlson, who has been friends with Belter for quite a long time, for most of his life.
He was always kind of into the military stuff, but it was just
Here we go. Here we go, right? Oh, he was always kind of into the military stuff. Everyone's armchair quarterback after the fact. When you need people to defend you and say things like, he never asked people to violence ever. This was something, unfortunately, this is something my family would probably say, he was kind of on the fringe. He thought everything was a conspiracy, feeding right into discrediting a person, right? Now, again, I don't know if this guy did it or not. I'm just giving you my assessment of the very first person that his longtime friend, who you think would defend a person won't.
We were always like that. Me and him, we used to play army men. He always had a fascination with military equipment. So do I. But I'm 100.
Careful, dude. You'll be next. No, but he doesn't fit the profile, does he? He doesn't fit the profile they're looking for. So they would never say this guy did it, because people would go, man, this guy can't even hop over a fence. Of course he didn't do it. And they would know.
Miles away from killing people.
My gosh.
Again, that is David Carlson.
Okay, so that's the story on what happened to the congressman. This is crazy. Now, of course, people are going to believe that Trump had something to do with this. He's going through picking off Democrats. And I wouldn't buy into that. I don't think that's what's happening here, because both sides are working together. This is just chaos magic. Okay. It's to put the left in fear. And then again, the left has just co-opted our sentiment on this channel and others about the surveillance state and the police state. So now we're all going to get lumped in with that. You see how this works? So they have to continue this right-left divide in this paradigm. So what went down at the military parade? Well, pretty much nothing, except everything. What do you mean, Casey? Nothing happened at the military parade. Well, absolutely it did. And this is the most important part of the show today. Because as I watched the first half hour of the parade, I realized something. I had an epiphany. That they had just firmly established another paradigm. The patriot-loving right at the parade, who puts complete trust in Trump and everything he's doing, including the surveillance state, including military drones, including the Marines, including Project Gotham, collating your personal data and determining if you're likely to commit a crime. And they have firmly placed the left on the other side. And this was the reason for the juxtaposition of the No Kings protests versus Trump's military parade. It was all set up. So, what does this mean? Well, what it means is that these people have fallen angel intelligence in their ability to corral people into their desired outcomes by pitting one side against the other. And to me, this is as clear as day. The resistance to the police state, it used to be the flagship of the conservative right, didn't it? Not anymore. And this parade of freedom went on uninterrupted. Why? Because the protesters were locked out by a huge fence. Think of the irony. A freedom parade where your freedoms can't be exercised. So what was achieved here? Well, this was a banner ritual. A banner ritual to firmly establish the left as the ones now opposing electronic tyranny, AI surveillance, and the breach of posse comitatus. So, by opposing Trump, people assume you side with the left. It's really brilliant how they did this, isn't it? They needed the parade so that they could create stark contrast to the No Kings protests to firmly establish the divide and the actors and players within it. I hope this is making sense for you guys, because it makes all the sense in the world to me. Palantir, Oracle, Amazon, all essentially paid for the parade. Amazon made a killing during COVID as people were ordering online because they were locked down. China got rich. How? Because 80% of Amazon products were Chinese. Palantir, Project Gotham, all of your personal data, mixing CIA, because they originally started with the CIA, remember? Infiltrating your private life and using that data to spy on you. Oracle helping. And so this is not freedom. It's the opposite of freedom. Here it is, New York Post. Oracle, Palantir, Amazon sponsored the parade. So, don't fall for the traps. Don't fall for it, you guys. I hope this is all making sense. Best to steer clear of all this stuff and keep calling out the right-left paradigm so that people finally wake up. Otherwise, you're just cannon fodder for these people. If Biden or Kamala Harris had done everything that Trump's doing, people would have rioted in the streets. If Biden was looking at your private data and determining if you were likely to commit a crime, people would be rioting in the streets. Metallica played in the background as the military marched through, as well as who else? Let's go through this here. Here's the recap. I'll put links to all this for those of you that are interested in the details. But Led Zeppelin, Metallica, Enter Sandman was the song that was played. And of course, that is one of the most demonic songs you could ever imagine, about the Sandman coming into your dreams, into a child's dreams. This is our world, you guys. This is our world. And after all that chaos about immigration enforcement, at the end of the day, Trump decides to go easy on the illegals at the farms, the meatpacking plants, hotels, and restaurants, offering amnesty. AP, let's read. The Trump administration directed immigration officers to pause arrests at farms, restaurants, and hotels after Trump expressed alarm about the impact of aggressive enforcement. The move follows weeks of increased enforcement. Now, by the end of all this, understand that people will simply say, well, at least he got the criminals out of here. Well, what was gained by that? Yes, that was good and it needed to happen. But what was gained really was their surveillance state. They got all their practice in. They've got the precedent set. They now can fly Predator drones and Reaper drones over American soil. That's now been accepted. They can now call up the Marines whenever they want. They can now go into your private data, show up to your door because you bought 10 bags of fertilizer for your farm. The precedent has been set. And I want to be clear here about this. I want to be clear. So, for a few illegal criminals being sent off to an El Salvadorian prison, who for some reason, when they're arrested, every single video we see with their heads down, so we don't really know who these people are. We don't even know if they're real. We never see their faces. All we get are pictures. And so you have to wonder if even that's real. And we've essentially given up all of our freedoms and rights in America for electronic tyranny. It's here, you guys. So we're at a point now where I do have to tell you, be careful what you say online. I know some of you get very aggressive and angry and say some things about what you're going to do. That time is over. Now, I would never do that myself, but you think you have the freedom to speak about these things? Well, it's all going to be monitored now. That doesn't mean we can't have discussions about all this stuff today, about what we're talking about in the context of them telling lies. But, if you go onto a social media post and you say you're showing up to the No Kings movement and you're bringing a crowbar, you're going to get a knock at your door. We're there, you guys. We're there. So, now understand, again, I'm calling out the right and the left. This isn't just Trump. It's the left too. They got him to where he is now to be able to flex these things. It was all a setup. You ever wonder why the left was so radical? They had to be. That was their role. Their role was to bring drag queens into the library and read to your children while they're opening their legs. That was done on purpose so that people would hate it and basically allow what came in next. I hope you understand, you guys. The only way you can truly understand this is on a deep spiritual level, when you truly understand all the way back to the Garden of Eden, and that Eve partook of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It was a tree of duality, a right and left tree. And this is the devil's playground. This is where he thrives, on division. He thrives on the two thieves at the right and left of Jesus. Why do you think Jesus was crucified between two thieves? He was trying to show you something. Because your salvation can be stolen if you're looking at the two thieves. But Jesus rose above that. He gave one of the thieves salvation through belief in him. He was trying to show you something, to step out of the right-left paradigm that plays you every single time. Because the right and left here is not real. They're only pretending to be right and left to manipulate you. And that's what this is all about. We've shown the proof over the last 12 years, haven't we? We've shown the proof. But very few can step outside of it because it's that effective. It draws you in, doesn't it? It angers you. But when you look at what each side is doing, then you begin to realize that none of it's real. Trump is literally going to give amnesty to these illegals after all this chaos he created. Are people on the right going to be upset at him? Of course they're not. They're going to say, well, at least he got rid of the criminals. Why are you must have Trump derangement syndrome. They just missed half the show about where I also called out the liberals for their part in it. I hope this is making sense to people. All right, I'm in the chat, you guys. That's pretty much what I want to show you. I'll put links to all these stories if you guys want to get all caught up and go through all this. But it's pretty much, the weekend's pretty much over in terms of all this. The paradigm has been set. And now anybody that says they have a problem with Palantir, they're going to be called a left-wing liberal. Wow. So, what else is going on? Oh, tomorrow. Trump and the rest of the stock market made some pretty bizarre and odd and curious stock moves just before the first case of COVID kicked off in 2019 in China. We're going to revisit those videos so that you can see with your own eyes that everybody at the top seemed to know what was going to happen before the rest of us did. There were huge investments in the pharmaceutical companies, a couple of which actually ended up making some of the smack of the nations, or at least played a part in the spam-demic. That was Trump and his investments. We're also going to look at worldwide stock moves. And all that's tomorrow. I don't just sit here and tell you guys what I think. I show you proof, right? All right. What else is going on, you guys? Thanks for showing up today. Thanks, Bear Jew. Thanks, Rage. Surprised by Nashville Proud Boys. Some appreciate and applauding musical protests against them. Remember, some people change. Takes time. Be patient. Palantir is here. Yes, Palantir is firmly established now. Now, we weren't the only channel warning about Palantir. In fact, I didn't actually start talking about it until we started looking into Vance. And someone else already had found that Vance, Trump's vice president, accepted $15 million from Palantir. He worked for Peter Thiel, who Peter Thiel was already admitted that he had blood boys. He literally had a boys that he would carry around with him almost as if they were like on a leash because they had an IV that he would take their blood to stay young. He literally admitted this. So, what kind of reality we live in where people are just like okay with that? You know, I was watching some of these interviews of people that showed up to the parade and some of the people who showed up to support Trump at the protests against the No Kings movement. And these people are completely asleep, wearing MAGA hats. And I'm like, do you not know that Trump is aligned with a guy who's literally a vampire, whose name, Peter Thiel, when you scramble it, says the reptile? But here's the problem. The algorithms hide these kinds of videos from those people. That's the problem. That's why they're not awake. They never get to see these videos. Because if they did, they might scratch their head and go, wow, that's weird. That's weird that Trump was already hooked up with Peter Thiel in his first term during the whole COVID thing. And he signed 5G and beyond, and they were behind the scenes already setting up the police state and Palantir's involvement in the government. And then, boom, bingo, just by some chance, Vance becomes his vice president, all hooked in with Palantir, who was CIA, which is supposed to be forbidden. You're not supposed to have CIA contractors working issues on American soil. CIA is supposed to be foreign, but yet we've accepted all this. So that's the truth, you guys. Well, Peter was at Bilderberg yesterday. Yeah, I guess there was someone tried to interview him, and they were basically saying a lot of the things that I just told you. They were trying to ask him questions about it, and I don't think he like responded at all. He was just like, "Get out of my face," because they know. They know. Casey, there's no way Peter Thiel had a blood boy. There's no way. You're just making stuff up. Peter Thiel wants to inject himself with young people's blood. The reptile. He's a Christian. Wow. Vanity Fair 2016. Put a link to that story. Casey, you just make all this stuff up, man. You have Trump derangement syndrome. Sound like the Napoleon Dynamite. Oh my gosh. Unbelievable. Okay, what else is going on, you guys? Oh, so for those of you that showed up today, so Clover the deer, I have a deer. Her name is Clover. She's a second year deer. She's about 75 pounds. And she has decided to take up residence in my backyard, which is just adorable. And she mows my grass. She mows the clover. She just eats all the clover. But the other day, she got into my blackberries, my thornless blackberries. I was like, oh, no, you didn't. So I had to run her off. But then she came back. So I think the only time I'm going to tell her to run off is if I see her by the blackberries. I should put a giant fence around the blackberries, but I think I can train this deer. But as many of you know, all it takes is one night. One night when they decide they're going to cross boundaries, and you'll literally lose your entire garden to one deer. That's how much they can eat. So Clover, just yesterday, I look out the window and she literally was bedding down, just laying down in the clover, rolling around. I was like, are you kidding me? Just right outside my window, like 5 yards. She just lays down in the grass. And I just started laughing. She looks in the window. Of course, she can't see me because it's light out there and dark in here. But all I could do was laugh. So that's the story on Clover, the deer. All right. What else is going on, you guys? Okay. Yeah, I just named her Clover because that's what she eats. Simple. Keep it simple. All right. Yeah, she's like a second year. She doesn't have any spots. Um, and she's not pregnant, I don't think. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Is there anything I missed from over the weekend? I just tried to kind of search around the internet to see what I could find about what went down. Oh, there were some police that got roughed up in, I think I forgot to cover this, you guys. I'm sorry. Some police that got roughed up. I think it was in Austin. Here we go. Blue City joins LA chaos as anti-ICE agitators injure officers in violent riots. Wow. Austin Police Department has released several mugshots of 8 people who were arrested after anti-immigration and customs enforcement agitators turned violent this week. So here are the individuals. Look at this. You've got to be kidding me, right? So they all look like actors, right? Or military. So this guy looks like military. He looks like he's wearing a costume almost. And they got to throw in the foreigner, right? Look at this. This is crazy. So here, this lady has a what is that? A moth or dragonfly tattoo on her neck? This guy's wearing makeup. Wow. Just bizarre. So they got a mix of people. So apparently they hurt some cops. Not cool. What other stories did I miss in here? Guess it got hot in Phoenix. Texas state capitol evacuated. Okay, let's see here. Proud Boys and all that. You guys heard about all that. Okay. Spooky. Yeah, like who are those people? Like that's the new normal now. This is what people look like now. I'm not trying to be mean, but really? They look like basically a bunch of homeless vagrants. Or some people who needed the $500 they were paying people to show up. Wow. So, the people that showed up, everybody got their face printed from the Reaper drone. And now they can do their, after all the chaos is over, they can go to your house, put you on a list, and eventually send you off to El Salvador. And those people were probably just the patsies, or those were the provocateurs. They're probably not even in trouble, the picture we just saw. But all the other people who showed up are the ones in trouble. You guys, they have algorithms now. They just told us they launched Gotham. So they use the algorithm, they take video, and then the AI determines if you've committed a crime or not, right? So you've got this Reaper drone. It's just got its camera focused on a crowd of people. And the algorithm does the rest. It goes, wow, that guy's arm just moved and an object came out of his hand. Boom, that's a crime. They run your face through, they match it up with your real ID, and they show up to your door within the next week. That's what happened here. Okay, I hope you're getting this. And then we never hear from you again. They can send you off to El Salvador. You're gone. Now, the local news will be the people who cover something like this, and I anticipate. Here's my prediction. I rarely ever make predictions, but I feel like within the next week or two, we're going to start hearing about arrests from the No Kings movement. And you're going to be like, how did that happen? Why did it take them a week or two? Well, because the algorithms are processing the data. And they'll start saying, oh, this person was arrested, and they'll have all this meticulous camera footage. And you'll be like, how did that happen? Well, it's from the drones that are observing, and it's all being tested. So that's my prediction. Within the next week or two, we'll hear about arrests from the No Kings movement, and they'll say that these people were picked up on camera doing this, or that. And there'll be a lot of them too, like hundreds of people. It'll be just like the crapper hole, where they came back later and found all the social media posts and put together cases against all these people. So we'll see if it happens. But this is what I think's going to happen. All right. All right, you guys. Well, I guess I'll pop off here. I'll see you tomorrow with these stock picks that seem to suggest something really fishy was going on in the days and weeks and months leading up to the pandemic. And I will see you guys all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your weekend, you guys. Much love.